as an extension to my Deus Ex Treatise post that I made a video about. And then I made a post about this yesterday, I think it was too. One of the things that, kind of disheartens me with Invisible War, even now when I play it, is you know, just how disappointing it is to see JC and Paul and Tracer Tong turn out to be, the bad guys in the second game. Because in the first game, they're realizing that it's like all evil, and they want to destroy technology and start over or whatever. But then when you play Invisible War, it's like, oh, they were just evil the whole time. You like the JC's Abyss or whatever, right? His you know his base in Antarctica or whatever, and you can see videos of the conversation you can have with him online. And he's just sitting there saying a bunch of state apologetic bullshit. And, it's basically him and Paul and Tracer Tong are just like, well, we want to be the statists, right? It'll totally work when we do it, And it's like, wow, none of them learned anything from the first game. So, yeah, I don't know. That's something I didn't really pick up on when I was 12. Because when you're 12 years old, you're still kind of, if you're like me, you already see like what's going on or whatever. But there's enough social terrorism to, they'll peer pressure you into ignoring your intuition. Oh no, statism is totally valid. There's something wrong with, your observations of its depravity, right? It's got to be a you problem. So I don't know. When I first played the game, I would have thought that, like, oh wow, JC finally wants to make everything good. I don't understand how you, it just none of it makes sense. I don't know. You don't get freedom within a state, right? Like statism implies a lack of freedom. It's like being a citizen means you're a slave. And, every statist will sit there and talk all day about how their version of a state is like totally just and this. And he was talking about, like JC mentioned something about, law and justice. And it's like, no, dude, law precludes justice. Law is social collusion humans use specifically to prevent justice because they want to be a bunch of criminals and get away with it. I mean, a lot of these anarchists, what they call themselves anarchists, these weekend anarchists or whatever, they don't want a lack of the state so that they can do nothing wrong and evade persecution. They don't want to just evade persecution for doing nothing wrong. They want to be a criminal and get away with it. There's a huge fucking difference between the two. All right, we are not the same, right? Like however the meme goes on that. And no, I just want to be left the fuck alone. Whereas, like I said, these humans talking about anarchy, they just want to be a criminal with no consequences. And it's like, holy fuck, even video game characters act like that. But whenever I play Invisible War, sort of like in the first game, I always take the, I call it the, anarcho-primitivist ending, or whatever. The Tracer Tong ending, or I think call it, Dark Ages. I think Dark Ages ending is like the official name or whatever. But just like I do that in the first game, when I play Invisible War, I always take, the the Omar ending. They call it, I think they call it the Renegade ending. But, because the shit just needs to go away. Humans don't have a right to exist. And this whole planet just needs to be eradicated. And if, if the Omar want this piece of shit wasteland, they can fucking have it. At least there wouldn't be any humans left. But I don't know. It's just like I don't know. Maybe it's just replacing one hive mind with another. But hey, at least I'd be dead too, right? So that's the thing. Even if you got rid of humans, some other psychotic bipedal primate species would show up to fuck up everything. But at least there'd be a fucking brief period of no terrorism and oppression shit. But talking on the meta narrative stuff in Invisible War that really doesn't get the credit it deserves. One of the things that's interesting about it is actually the character of Leo Jankowski. He is sort of like the J.C. Denton, like Deus Ex One era J.C. Denton, like character within he's like Deus Ex within Invisible War or whatever. As he starts out fully on board with the corporate state terrorism shit, and then by the end of the game he realizes it's all bullshit, and he just wants to you know get rid of it and start over. And it's just weird how the real JC Denton, so to speak, just turns out to be another one of the bad guys. But every time I play the game, I always do that. I just I get to Liberty Island, I just knock out all the factions and just get rid of the computer thing or whatever the fuck it is. And I said, if the Omar want this piece of shit, they can have it. I don't even know why. I don't know. I don't know anything, I guess. But so it's like every human acts like that. They just want to. They don't want a lack of the state. They just want to be the statist. They want to be the one being the oppressor. It's like these fake minorities. Like, homosexuals, humans don't want to not be oppressed. They just want to be able to also be ones oppressing me, right? That's why I don't care about LGBT, for example. I never seen them protect me. What they have pride in. It's like when I show up and they see me as beneath them, they want to gang up on me too, right? So that means they're just more criminals because they're just going to oppress whoever they think. And they're just mad when it happens to them. That's all a human ever does. Well, I only don't like it when it affects me detrimentally. I guess the writing was on the wall with that in the original game. Tracer Tong just wants you to collapse communications so he can be the lead. He can be the leader of Hong Kong or something. Just stupid. But at least the game is realistic. It's like, yeah, that's how that works. But like there really is no way out. I mean, even in a game like Deus Ex One or Invisible War or something like that, it's just kind of hilarious how technologically unadvanced it is. But like the real world is always way more fucking oppressive. You know, it's like in Stalker, Shadow, Chernobyl. Like even that scenario would be a fucking dream compared to real life because as desolate and fucking oppressive of a wasteland, Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl has, at least, you can still at least, get away from everything. So I'll just go into this abandoned tunnel, right? Or up in this, whatever it is. And all right, maybe there's mutants and stuff, but there's always somewhere you could just kind of sit there and nothing will bother you, right? So you can't even get that in real life. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly where the inflection point happened for me, but at some point it clicked that JC and Tracer Tong and all that weren't the correct scenario in Invisible War. And it's just, I don't know, it's just weird to think that there was a point in my life where I was, I thought there was there was a point in my life I thought there was such a thing as a good human, or that humans could be people. Now the idea of the human species getting annihilated or whatever is like, that's the best case scenario. Or even this idea that there could be a good government, or this, or like, it's impossible. Your little Helios or whatever, all knowing, all seeing AI, it's not a real thing. It's fundamentally restricted by generalizations, no different than humans are. That because humans are the ones that built the hardware and wrote the software. And, again, sort of like everything else, just like in the original game, the guys that made the AI, it identified them as a terrorist group as well, right? Like how, their own, you know, lack of foresight fucks them over, and wow, you see them doing that now with like their, real, so to speak, AI, you know, like, in real life or whatever. And it's just funny to see. I don't know. It'll never get the credit, but Invisible War had you know, a way more realistic story, and probably, predicted, so to speak, way a way a more accurate conception of modern life than the original game did. The fucking just large language model chatbots and mass surveillance shit. And, you can't walk anywhere without, a quadrillion, chomovision cameras painting every, fucking micrometer of fucking everything. You can't just, sit somewhere and just be left alone with your thoughts. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. But like all these, fake anarchists, like one of my goth exes, right, with his little anarchy wallet. It's like it's easy to be an anarchist, when the state isn't against you. Like society's not against you. Like, if anything, they're facilitating you. They let you get away with being a piece of shit, right? And like I mentioned it before, like what a real outlaw is. You get so many child molesting fucking humans call themselves an outlaw like it's a badge of honor. It's like, no, being an outlaw means you're outside the law. You know, it means legally anyone's allowed to kill you. Right? Being a true pariah is not something you should aspire to. But like when motherfuckers put on these affectations, it just shows how easy they have it. Oh, you're an anarchist. Okay, you taking a stand is zero risk, right? It's like any other form of fucking virtue signaling. But, you know, there's just usurpers on everything. You even gotta usurp a fucking A with a circle around it. And I kind of just am curious what it would have looked like if the NSF had won or something. My guess is it would have been more statist bullshit, right? Like they're not seceding from anything. But, you know, so it's like if it was somebody like J.C. Denton could see what he saw in the first game and go right back to that. I mean, that's no different than Solzhenitsyn or Orwell or whoever calling themselves a socialist after just seeing it firsthand, right? Up close. And I mean, it's like I mean, all of this stuff is just different flavors of feudalism. It's all societalism, is just an extension of social collusion of humans, right? You call it, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same shit. It truly is. It's just all needless terrorism and oppression. And as I said, it truly is escapism, because like a video game is like the only place I could even hypothetically get away from this shit. I would give anything for a coronal mass ejection or some solar event to just destroy all technology, so I can just go back to being left alone again, right? Or just at all, because it's always been there, to just differing degrees of your awareness of it. But whatever.